Hi everyone, it's Emma here, and this week I am talking about your periods and menopause. So how will your periods eventually come to an end? So although it's our lovely Eileen, which usually covers the menopause, it is also an important area for younger women to consider. There is also some research suggesting that if we have a worse time of it in our younger years, so symptoms of PMS for example, then we may be more likely to have issues in the lead up to menopause. So hopefully just some help in understanding what might happen in the menopause can help us prepare. And obviously people can go through the menopause at different ages. So the average age is kind of between 45 and 55, but this can happen slightly younger. So it's good just to have a bit of an understanding of what to look out for and why these changes might be occurring. So what do we need to know about the menopause? So the menopause is a completely natural process in a woman's life, and it starts to occur as a result of changing hormones. So the main hormonal change that we experience during this time is estrogen levels starting to drop. But of course it's not often plain sailing. Your estrogen doesn't always just drop nice and gradually. There can be fluctuations in the estrogen for many years, even during that perimenopause phase, and that's what we think can give rise to many of the symptoms that we might experience. So in some cases, women quite often experience kind of heavier, more frequent periods for a while, not always though, and then eventually you might notice that your periods are becoming less frequent until they stop altogether. So by definition, the menopause is your last ever menstrual period, but of course you might not understand it's your last one at the time, and in some cases your periods might disappear for a while, months, even up to a year or something, and then come back, especially if there's been changes in your diet or lifestyle. So that's just something to consider. Some common symptoms of menopause as your hormones fluctuate can include things like hot flushes, but there also are some lesser known symptoms such as joint aches and pains and things, but our menopause expert Eileen talks a lot more about these in more detail on our menopause hub if you are interested. So as I've said, your hormones start to decrease and you're also less likely to ovulate, but as I say, your periods can come back, and up to a year or two after your last ever period, we would say just to take extra precautions, because there is still a chance that you could ovulate during that time, especially if you're getting kind of periods back here and there and they're a bit irregular still. So I'm just going to talk through some of the main symptoms so you can kind of feel somewhat prepared and understand what to expect. So as I've said, your periods might become kind of more regular, heavier, that shorter cycle, so coming more frequently than every 28 days. And that can be due to actually some estrogen dominance in the lead up. So when I talked about these fluctuations in hormones and estrogen could be a little higher for a little while, which could give rise to these heavier, more frequent periods. Then as time goes on, they tend to become a bit more irregular, and then kind of further apart, but irregular periods are normal during this time, so that's quite a common question that we get asked. Hot flushes and night sweats are a particularly common symptom, quite characteristic of menopause. Again, that's due to fluctuating estrogen. It kind of influence our temperature control centre in our brain, and that can give rise to these hot flushes during the day or night sweats at night, or a bit of both. Some other common symptoms can include sore breasts, low libido, fluctuating weight changes and mood swings, and much of this is down to that fluctuating estrogen that I talk about. And the reason it can affect so many areas of our body, the joint aches and pains is the other one, is that we have the estrogen receptors all over our bodies. So as estrogen fluctuates and drops off, these receptors are stimulated too much or not enough, quite often not enough when estrogen is dropping off. So in terms of digestion, estrogen normally helps to kind of keep things quite regular, but that drop off can just really slow things down. In terms of moods, you're getting those kind of low symptoms, so it's kind of slow and low symptoms, that's quite often the case. although these fluctuations again can cause havoc and give rise to that irritability and those kind of angry mood swings as well. So these are all quite common scenarios, but ultimately it's all down to those unstable levels of estrogen. There are also some lifestyle factors that could potentially add to your symptoms during this time. So at Vogo, we always like to ask a bit more about the situation as a whole, take that holistic approach to health. So as much as the hormones are important, there are some other influences in their own right, but also that could also be influencing your hormones directly. So first of all, we have diet. So whilst we're going through these changes, it can be quite stressful. It's a physical stressor as well as mentally, so that in itself could potentially influence our diet. So we know that kind of refined carbohydrates and sugars could potentially influence our kind of stress response. Adrenaline is released in response to sugar, and this in turn can actually influence your sex hormones as well as our mood more directly. So that can have a bit of a double whammy effect, and is just one to be aware of. To help slow the release of these carbs in our diet, that's where your healthy proteins and your healthy fats come in. So it's a case of trying to get these into every meal to help soften that blow in terms of your carbohydrates and your sugar content, which do occur naturally in our diet. It's just if we have these extra refined sources, then they can hit our blood sugar a bit harder. Then I always talk about drinks as well. We talk a lot about food, but it's important not to forget your drinks. So I've talked about that kind of underlying stress response, and caffeine is a really important one to consider. Caffeine does ignite our stress response, so this can be heightened if we are having quite a lot of caffeinated drinks during this time. I always say to try and up your water intake, so to aim for at least 1.5 litres a day. That's a minimum to support every system in your body, but also if we're drinking more water, we're less likely to be drinking so much of other things. So that's your caffeinated or your quite sugary drinks. So water is an absolute must. Also, if you're having night sweats or hot flushes, you're going to be actually losing more liquid than normal through your sweat. So water is more important than ever. But as I say, water helps every system of your body, from dryness, which is another common symptom, to your digestion, to your mood actually, and concentration and things. There's been lots of research there. Stress is another one. We've mentioned stress, that it's already a stressful time without external influences, which of course can be harder to manage depending on your circumstances. So it's just really about trying to incorporate some stress management techniques that perhaps work well for you. So whether that's doing a bit of exercise, which I'm going to talk about next, listening to some music, having a bath, reading a good book, just basically dedicating some time to you to relax and switch off and help to calm that stress response. Exercise in its own right is helpful in terms of supporting your metabolism, your mood, your sleep. We sleep better after exercise, and ultimately exercise is also so powerful because it's improving your resilience to stress. It's minimising stress as well. So again, it's a really good habit to get into. Like always, we never really recommend extremes, so even just going for a walk outside, even better, just for 10 minutes a day, can be really, really powerful, and especially during this time. Now I'm just going to quickly talk through some of our remedies and how they can help during this time. So first of all, we have the Agnus Castus. This is usually only really relevant near the start of menopause, so many of our customers will know it's helpful during PMS, but if you're getting those kind of heavy, more frequent periods at the initial stages of menopause, which is quite often the case, then the Agnus Castus would be the one to go for. It just helps to calm that kind of estrogen dominant state. Then for the majority of the menopause symptoms and the bulk of the perimenopause, where it tends to be your kind of more irregular periods and the whole range of symptoms that I've talked through, which are usually down to fluctuating estrogen, that's when your menopause support comes in. So menopause support is a source of fermented soy isoflavones, and these help to very, very gently support your estrogen levels. So that the isoflavones mimic estrogen in the body, very, very gently stimulate your estrogen receptors, and that's where it can help to calm a number of symptoms. So quite a nice all-rounder there. Then we also have the Menopause Sage, and this one would be specifically for your night sweats and your hot flushes. So we know sage isn't estrogenic in action, so it works differently for the menopause support. It's working more directly on your temperature centres, but it makes a lovely add-on to the menopause support potentially, or alone if the flushes seem to be your main symptom, but it can work in combination with the menopause support if need be as well. So that just about covers it. What I would just say is when would it be appropriate to go to your doctor? So if your symptoms are quite severe, quite persistent, they're really affecting your everyday life, and you've tried some of the natural remedies and they just don't seem to be cutting it, then you could go to your doctor and discuss the possibilities of HRT and other treatments. But it would be one to discuss with your doctor in terms of your own individual symptoms, and obviously where appropriate, you might want to try the more natural remedies first. So hopefully that's been useful. Any questions, feel free to contact me. Also, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Avogo channel, and also hit the bell icon where you will be alerted of any new videos. Thanks, and speak to you all soon.